Now I know a lot of people are starting to sow their tomatoes now, and I'm not going to do that now. Last year I did a bit of a rant actually about how stressful it was planting out my tomatoes at the time I used to do it always, which was kind of between the 5th and the 10th of May in the polytunnel. But we seem to be getting a lot of late frosts now. I mean, that's kind of our last frost date about that time, and we're still getting frosts the middle, sometimes even to late May. So what I decided to do was plant my tomatoes about 2, maybe 3 weeks later, so towards late May. Now I kind of got a bit of a logic to why that is. Well, the first thing is, I don't think it makes much difference. So tomatoes actually, even if I planted them at the beginning of May, or the 5th, 10th of May, something like that, it would still be really cold. We'd still have plenty of nights where the temperature was well below 10 degrees centigrade. And to be honest, tomatoes really don't thrive below 10 degrees C. They will struggle on, no problem at all, but they don't thrive. And that's the same, even more so, with peppers and cucumbers. So what I've decided to do is really think of not the last frost date, but roughly the 10 degrees centigrade date. And for me, that is towards the end of May. So that's when I think I'm going to plant them. And the benefit of that, or there are quite a few benefits actually of doing that. The first thing is it takes a bit of pressure off me space-wise in my growing environment at home, which is kind of full of peppers at that time of year. And I don't want the tomato plants to be too big. I want them to be small, stocky, really healthy plants. So that's the first thing, just easy from a space perspective. So the second thing is I think their plants will be healthier by being planted that little bit later. As I said, they'll be going in the ground when it's warmer, nighttime temperatures will be warmer. It's not possible for me to heat this polytunnel, it's too big. And so, I think they'll go in at a time when they're primed to thrive. And of course they'll be coming from a fairly warm conservatory sort of house windowsill sort of environment as well, and so they'll be used to those warmer nighttime temperatures, so they'll move in here when those temperatures are warmer. The third reason is I get an extra 2 to 3 weeks growing time in the polytunnel, and that's worth a lot to me because I have a lot of stuff in this polytunnel right now. I've got a lot of garlic, a lot of early onions, a lot of calabrese, a lot of cauliflowers, lots of beetroot, all sorts of stuff like that. And it gives me time to bring those crops to maturity and get a much bigger, better harvest from those than I would do if I was harvesting those in early May. And so, although I'm missing out on an slightly earlier harvest of tomatoes, I'm getting this huge extra harvest from the spring crops in the polytunnel. The next reason is that I actually think that the yield that you get from those tomatoes by planting them 3 weeks earlier is, and this is a hypothesis, I'm yet to prove it, but I think it's tiny. I think in practice, although it's 3 weeks, it's 3 weeks at a kind of stressful time for the tomatoes, at a time when, as I said, when temperatures are really too low for them. And so, although it's, as I say, 3 weeks, in practice it's only probably about 1 week of optimum growing time. So I don't really think that 1 week makes very much difference. But I'm going to test that, because I am going to put 5, well, if I can find space for 5 plants in containers. I'm going to wrap them in fleece in the polytunnel, and I'm going to put those in at about the 10th of May, and I'm going to put the rest in maybe about the, I don't know, 20th, 25th, something like that of May. So that sort of time difference. And I'm going to be guided, as I say, by nighttime temperatures, and because the plants will be a bit smaller, I can afford to hold them back a little bit if nighttime temperatures are still low. So that's kind of the logic there. And yeah, so we'll see. We'll do a comparison basically of how well those do in the containers and how well they do in the ground planted a little bit later. Obviously it's not a perfect comparison, but it's still a useful thing to look at. So the final thing that I'm doing is I am doing some windowsill tomatoes, just a few plants, maybe 4 or 5, just to get that early, super early taste of tomatoes, and those have just come through now, so those are ready to be potted on. But so what are my timings? So the timings I'm thinking of right now, and I'm just maybe subject to a little bit of change, is I think I'm going to do a test sowing, so only 2 or 3 seeds of each variety, and I'm going to do those on the 20th of March. I'm going to take the best one of those from the test sowings, and they're the ones I'm going to grow in containers in the polytunnel, and I'll probably just discard the rest, although I might hang on to them until I run out of space and see if I can think of something to do with them. Now I'm going to try grafting my tomatoes this year, and so that first sowing, the ones on the 20th of March, there'll be a test to see what germination's like, just to make sure if I've got a variety that's dud, I can buy some more seeds. And I'm also going to try my skills at grafting and see how that goes. So then I'm going to do my main sowing 2 weeks, possibly 3 weeks after those, so sometime in early April. And that's when I'm also going to do my test sowing, so at the same time, of my outdoor tomatoes, so I can test the germination of those. And I'm going to do my outdoor tomatoes 2 weeks later, the main sowing 2 weeks later, so that's after I've tested the germination. And again, if I've got any duds, I can get some new varieties. So quite conservative really by comparison with a lot of people, but my focus isn't really on getting the earliest possible tomatoes, because my polytunnel is absolutely crammed full of stuff. I'm not desperate to grow something. I'm already growing plenty of stuff. So my kind of addiction to growing is well fed. I don't really have any pressure to get something that early. And to be honest, when I'm thinking of all of that wondrous kind of harvest that I'm going to get in May, missing out on a punnet of tomatoes, and that's about what it might actually be, just like 1 or 2 punnets of tomatoes, missing out just by sowing things that little bit later. And I'm going to miss out, more importantly, on all the stress and pressure of having these massive plants that I've got nowhere to put, and all that stress and pressure worrying about, am I going to lose the whole lot of them if we get a late frost in May? So kind of that's my strategy for tomatoes. I'm going to do quite a lot of things different this year. Lots of experiments with interplanting and all sorts of stuff. And I've sown quite a lot more tomatoes in the polytunnel than I've done in the past. Now when it comes to cucumbers, I'm basically following almost exactly that same strategy, but probably just running 1 week later, because cucumbers are just that bit more sensitive to the cold. And again, I'll have cucumbers in the conservatory, and so I've got no pressure at all to have early cucumbers in the polytunnel. What I want is healthy plants, and that's my focus generally this year, is absolute focus on healthy plants, because healthy plants make healthy food, and healthy plants make healthy soil, and healthy plants get a lot less disease and pests. So healthy plants is really where it's at. Anyway, my name is Steve. This is the Seaside Kitchen Garden and Allotment channel, and I'll see you soon.